Hey, Tettles, I have a cold open for you, but you have to start it.
So Dratnos, I have a leak. Came up with it myself. How is this a cold open? You literally, this guy actually goes, I have a cold open for you. But okay, whatever. Anyways, so what we're doing today, so there's actually been a little, this is so awkward already. We're going to be talking about like the state of alpha.
He's just spiraling.
I hate this. I hate this. We're going to be talking about like state of alpha and how things are looking for release, because if you've been paying attention, there was a leak posted, very unconfirmed. Like Blizzard has not announced this. It's not clear if it's even legitimate or not. But there was a leak that was posted about when pre-patch was for Dragonflight and when the expansion launch was going to be, which was for pre-patch October 25th, for launch November 28th. I think that this came as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people just looking at these dates generally.
Yeah, it's worth noting that after this leak came out, I think some of the Wrath dates were confirmed.
Yes.
So, but on the other hand, maybe they were pretty predictable based on what we knew about like beta timings and pre-patch timings and stuff anyways. But I would describe this as a leak that looks plausible, but certainly is nowhere near confirmed. But it has led to a lot of discussion about the timing of WoW 10.0, especially based on like what's the state of beta right now, or of alpha right now, because it's still not even in beta yet. And what's this going to mean for, say, the first raid tier's timing? Is it going to be like Castle Nathria, another holiday raid? These are the questions that we will dive into now.
Okay, let's start tackling the meat of this whole entire discussion. I think talking about like the state of dungeons and the state of questing is like a good starting point. So you and I have actually played alpha a decent amount. I've tested every dungeon that's not the most recent one with the dragon riding in it. I think you're also similar, where you've tested everything except for the most recent dungeon with dragon riding in it.
Yeah, the dragon riding dungeon does it looks good. When people ask me about if I would like there to be a dragon riding dungeon, I was initially kind of against it, but just because like I'm against gimmicks and M+. But I actually think dragon riding is so good that I think this is going to be okay.
Okay,
it's basically just like you have the whole zone as your dungeon, and you just dragon ride from like boss to boss, and there's these big gusts of wind that you can use if you kind of int your dragon riding to get some altitude again. And I don't think it's gonna like make the dungeon suck as a M+ thing. Like, I mean, you're gonna deplete keys based off of whether people are good or bad dragon riders. I think it actually, I'm cautiously pretty optimistic about there being dragon riding in M+ here.
Yeah, so it's called Knockhood Offensive. I'm going to link this tweet down in the description, including all of like the Wowhead articles that we're looking at today, like the pre-patch stuff and whatnot. This like video from Tally's just B-roll footage, but this kind of shows, if you look, he opens up his mini map and he's flying from boss to boss, or like trash pack to trash pack, and that's basically how this dungeon is structured. It calls into question like, how is this dungeon going to perform in like a M+ timed environment? I think if this is the take on dragon riding in dungeons, this is a pretty smart way to make it not feel super
like if we had to
gimmicky.
Do like a dragon riding bombing run, I feel like that would be awful. But
yes,
I think just dragon riding as like the way that you travel around the dungeon, I'm kind of jazzed about it. I think it could be sweet. I will say there are still ways that this could go wrong in M+. I reserve the right to change my mind about whether or not this is good for M+.
And then as for like the state of the other dungeons, I feel like you and I have kind of been pretty optimistic on a lot of the other dungeons. I guess the only one that I haven't loved was like Uldaman, Legacy of Tyr. I wasn't like super hot on that one, but I'm really interested to see if they make any changes to that one, what that one's going to even potentially look like in M+. How are mythic mechanics going to affect these dungeons? It's like really notable that mythic is not out for these dungeons, so the bosses could potentially change as well. That could pique my interest a little bit. But overall, I feel like I'm pretty positive on the dungeons. We know that Court of Stars is also returning. I think that there could be some level of revamp. We've had like Season 4 on live. I wasn't super optimistic on revamped dungeons just in M+ in general, but now with like the Season 4 stuff, Court of Stars being a potential returner dungeon, Temple of the Jade Serpent, I think, is also the other returning dungeon. Both of those could be pretty positive as well. So I think overall, the state of dungeons, I'm cautiously optimistic on. Like Dratnos, I do reserve the right to change my opinion, but I think that these are both looking pretty solid, and they feel kind of finished. We haven't seen them in M+, but they feel kind of finished.
Yeah, so that kind of leads us into the concern that people are having of like, if this leak is real, is the expansion going to be ready on time? And I think the answer actually, like, there's a lot of stuff that's not in alpha yet, sure, but actually, there's kind of a lot of stuff that already is.
Okay.
Of the 38 class trees or spec trees, we have 36 of them. We're just missing Vengeance and Havoc at this point. Um, Now, there are still some not yet implemented talents in each of them, but for the most part, they're there. And I think that they're being iterated on quickly enough that I think they'll be ready for release. Yeah, potentially even before this leaked release date. And they've been looking pretty good. The ones that have been getting kind of negative reaction largely have been getting worked on. Again, not all of them. I'm sure there's people already in the comments about their spec, how horrible it is and how it's the end of the world for them. But like, I would say most of them have been looking pretty good, and it seems like they are getting around to whichever ones most need it.
I feel like the elephant in the room, though, is like the lack of updates for the talent trees, at least in any major meaningful way. Were you pretty happy with the monk one that got released today? I don't really want to talk about it like a specifics, but generally, did you think the monk one was pretty solid?
Yeah, the monk one looks sweet. I think, especially I'm not sure about Windwalker, but the other two specs I know, all the people I know that are playing the other two specs are kind of jazzed about them.
Yeah, and then
people like hunters are getting, like, the hunter tree has been reworked from, especially survival was like pretty underwhelming when it was first spoiled, and now it's coming out and it's all the hunter trees are getting great iteration over them. There's certainly a couple specs that maybe being left behind a little bit, but there's certainly enough time for them to, like, if those specs make it to launch and they're not updated, I don't think it'll be because they didn't have enough time to do so. I think it'll be because like they didn't update it, like they just didn't do it, which might happen. I'm not ruling out that possibility, of course.
I mean, I think that that's a major concern for a lot of people, is just like the lack of talent updates or the lack of like blue posts about specific classes.
I still think the rate of talent updates over time has been good. It's just like maybe it's been concentrated on a couple specific specs that the other one, like if the other ones remain untouched, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty good point. As for the state of questing, I haven't ran into too many problems. It feels like the zone and like the open world and such is designed in like a really nice way where it's like dragon riding feels very solid in a lot of these situations. It feels like there's a lot of things that you are able to do. I haven't run into too many problems in questing. That's kind of something that you have to worry about. I remember whenever we were initially leveling through Shadowlands, not much of the questing was really available, especially super early on. And like, in addition to that, there was only like one zone available. There's only like Bastion available for a while. On top of that, there was the Necropolis that was in Maldraxxus that was like bugged even in release. Like it released bugged.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed anything that's like major game breaking like that yet for Dragonflight questing.
Yeah, there's a couple of small bugged quests and stuff, but it doesn't feel like a buggy mess or anything of the sort. So I agree. Like, I think that the expansion leveling process is certainly going to be ready for release and like that. That seems like it's well on pace for that.
Okay.
Obviously, like it's likely that when they launch this, there's going to be some bugged quest or whatever. It's usually not a bugged quest. There's usually some quest that just 4,000 people all doing it all at once breaks it on the server. Do you remember the one at the start of Ardenweld?
Yes.
In Shadowlands, where it was like one person could click on the mount every time it came down or something. It's like, hopefully they catch that, but even if they don't, it's like that'll be one quest or something.
So then this has been a question that's posed for a lot of people. Like, when is beta? When are we going to have raid testing? When is M+ testing going to be coming out? My suspicion is sooner rather than later, especially with the 2022 release date that has been imposed. Not even talking about the leaks, just with the 2022 release date, I think that beta is... I wouldn't be shocked if it came out next week with Demon Hunter Talent Tree. Like, if it came out next week with Demon Hunter Talent Tree, they also had like... was it level 70 characters? I think
level 70s are on alpha right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the level 70 characters, if the Demon Hunter Talent Tree came out, and then on top of that they had some announced raid testing, M+ testing coming soon, that kind of thing, it wouldn't even surprise me.
Yeah,
you kind of agree with that? Yeah,
I think it's likely to be soon, because again, like even just with the 2022 announced date, like the leaked date is what, November something is the thing the leak says. So I mean, it can't be much later than that if they're still hitting the 2022 announced
November
release date.
28th is the leaked global launch. Leaked again.
Yeah,
may not even be leaked. Could be fake.
Unconfirmed leak. Obviously, could be a bait. Could be a timeless bait. Yeah, I don't know. That does bring up the question though of the raid schedule, because a 28th expansion pack would probably mean 2 weeks of no raid, right?
Yeah.
And then like a heroic week in mid-December, and then a mythic week on say December 20th or something.
Is that the Tuesday, Wednesday? Is like 2021?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's when it would be.
Let me
Which would mean that unless we're looking at a tier shorter than any tier in the past 6 years, it will be ongoing, not just for the Race to World First, but for every single other Mythic Progression guild in the world. Over like Christmas for those who celebrate that, or other holidays that are in that time.
It's very interesting. So I've seen a lot of different points of view on Twitter. This is something that I actually want to hear about in the comment section, because I can't tell if I'm disconnected or not. I've seen a lot of negative pushback over putting this during the holidays. Obviously, my ecosystem, largely Mythic Raiders who care about Mythic rating, so it makes sense why they would care about it being like starting during the holidays. Okay, players are going to take time off. It's not a question of should they, they're going to take time off, and you're going to be running into these issues. And then it's like a question of should they really be releasing the raid on the 20th of December?
Yeah, so the argument I usually see is like, oh, this is going to be a problem. Here's all the ways it's going to affect me as a raider. And then the counter argument is like, oh, this is just a 1% issue. Only Race to World First raiders are affected because, they're the only people that are, that play at this high level. And then the counter argument to that is, no, this affects like all Mythic Progression teams that would have it. Basically anybody that would want to take time off work or would want to do progression right in these first couple weeks. Any guild that has some mix of people that do that, and then people that like don't want to miss family time of some kind, right? If there's always going to be some kind of tension, if either there are people that want different things in your guild, or if there are people within your guild that want to do both of those things, which most Mythic Progression guilds will have people in both camps and will be pulled in two different directions there. But then the counter argument to that is that's still a 1% issue. There's such a small fraction of Mythic rating progression people playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And a lot more people would love there to be a fresh expansion to be playing during their downtime between, say, December 25th and December 30th, when a lot of people have that entire week off, right? Having that time be when the content is fresh is like something that's worth inting some Mythic Progression guilds and having their lives be worse, which for most such guilds, it will be like there'll be people in my guild whose lives will be worse because this is over Christmas instead of not.
I mean, obviously it's clearly a problem for like Race to World problem. It's going to be an issue for Race to World First guilds as to like what they're going to have to juggle. Are they going to juggle their hobby, or are they going to like their hobby and their job, or are they going to
I tend to think that it's actually like it probably hits World 10 and below, World 10 to 200 much harder than it hits above World 10, because like above World 10 the answer is just we're raiding, right? Like we're just raiding. We're gonna have one or two people that are like, oh, I can't this time because I've got a family holiday or something like that, and we'll play around it. But like we're raiding, right? It's same for you and me, right? It's like, oh, we're busy doing Race to World First stuff, right? Like that's we know what the priority is, but like people that just like love Mythic raiding and Mythic raid for 12 hours a week or something, but it's their favorite thing, and they do it with a good guild and they play at a high level. Those are the sorts of people who normally would be able to enjoy a holiday with their families, and now have to feel like they're letting the guild down if they do that, or
exactly
have to like be benched to do that, which either of those things is, it's not the end of the world, obviously, right? Like it's a small problem, but is it a problem worth fixing? Maybe. I would argue that it's probably not a problem worth moving the expansion launch for, but maybe it's a problem worth delaying the raid by a week or two for.
I'm really surprised that they're willing to go down this path again, especially with how Castle Nathria kind of played out. So there wasn't like a ton of broken stuff in Nathria, but there was stuff that probably should have been fixed a lot faster. And if the expansion launch was all hands on deck like it normally is, it more likely than not would have been fixed faster. Things that come to mind are like, you could
Stone Legion Generals.
You could teleport Sludge Fist into Huntsman Altamore's room and have it do no mechanics. Summoning didn't work for the first 2 weeks.
Oh my god,
I
remember that. Yeah.
There was just weird stuff like that where it's like, if the team was all hands on deck, it probably would have been addressed a little bit sooner. But since it came out during the holidays, obviously not everybody was in the office and it wouldn't get fixed. Now, is that something that's a Blizzard internal issue? Like that's not even like a player base issue,
right? Yeah, and that's the question. Like, that's the other question is like, how does this affect devs' holidays? I imagine that it affects the devs' holidays a lot less if it's just the raid releasing, on December 13th and the expansion released on November 28th. Like, I imagine that most of the rush is over by then, but definitely there is some, raid stuff that needs to be done. if it's fresh, right?
I mean, this is gonna be like politics management. They have to figure out like a time that works. I don't think that it would be really strange, I guess, to see it come out on December 20th. I think this would be the third raid tier that would release around the Christmas time. The first two were Trial of Valor. I'm pretty sure that raid released like December 12th or something like that. Something really close to the holidays as well. And then like to most major holidays as well. And then obviously Castle Nafta released like the 8th or something of the sort as well, where it's like, okay, we've seen this is not unprecedented. It's not unprecedented for them to put a raid around the holidays. So I selfishly don't want it around the holidays because I also had last expansion launch around the holidays. Again, this November 28th date next to American Thanksgiving. Selfishly, I hate that. Like I want to spend time with my family. Again, the raid releasing. Again, it is 100% a selfish thing for me to say. I don't want it around those dates. However, I do understand why. Like if they're just going to ship it, they're going to ship it, and I'm going to make it work. This is my job, right? Like sometimes you got to do things you don't want, and it'll be fine. But selfishly, I don't want it.
I don't even care. Like I don't even care about busy holidays. I'm
Yeah, sure.
But
I've already talked to my parents about it.
Yeah, I think the thing is like I would never blame anybody for like arguing for their own personal interest as well on like in either direction on Twitter and stuff like that. But I have seen a lot of takes that kind of like are arguing that it's like an obvious thing either way, that it's best for everybody, and I think it's definitely not that. Like I think you can make a strong argument either way for benefits versus drawbacks of having the fresh content around the holidays.
What I will say is I'm surprised with this date. I would have expected it to be like the first 2 weeks of the expansion going over the holidays, where there is like a reasonable amount of downtime. There's not a ton to do.
Well, when you think about like dev time, though, I imagine that in terms of like when the whole expansion is fresh, that's like big dev time. Busy.
Or anything that's like code red broken.
I mean, just like the servers have just come up, like all these new things are being stress tested. Like I imagine that is much more. There's much more like dev hours needed in the first couple of weeks of the patch than the first couple of weeks of the raid.
I think we kind of talked this one in a little bit of a circle. I feel like you and I are a little bit in agreement. Of course, it's going to be everybody's going to argue their own selfish interest. I still can't tell if I'm actually just in an echo chamber.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is hard to tell because like the part of Twitter we inhabit, it seems like 90-10 against a raid over holidays.
Mythic Raider level. Echo chamber where it's like, okay, people will be taking time off. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing I want to discuss, with the current state of beta/alpha, how do you feel about Dragonflight right now, and will it be ready? I feel like yes. We talked about this like a few weeks back. I want to say like maybe almost a month ago at this point. I still feel like Dragonflight will be ready. It was really surprising with like how it came out in alpha waves, and I think that we talked about that a lot. I think right now Dragonflight's looking a lot more ready than I felt like Shadowlands was at this current point. The big elephant in the room for me, talent trees. I think that a lot of people, that's still a major grievance for them. Not every talent tree has been created equal, and I think that a lot of the ones that have been coming out lately, people haven't had too many issues with. But obviously, it's by like a spec by spec and a class by class basis. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I agree. I think that certainly there's some specific specs that seem like they could use some more talent time, perhaps. I will also say I think that the expansion, if it comes out good or bad, I don't think it's because they didn't have enough time. Like if it comes out bad, I think it's because I think they have the time to make it come out good from here. And in the same way to Shadowlands, like Shadowlands, I think came out with a lot of problems that were not time related. And so I think if Dragonflight comes out with like bad talent trees, I don't think based on the speed that they've been iterating at this point, like I think it would just be because they either slowed down or they just didn't apply that same process to the trees that still need that done to them.
Completely conversely, I do think that 9.2.5, 9.2, 9.1.5, all actually very good patches lately. Season 4, banger. Big fan of Season 4 with how it's been launched. I'm really excited for Dragonflight, assuming that they're going to keep up the momentum. I hope we see like maybe some loot updates as well, that kind of thing, with like the dinar and deterministic loot system. I feel like that's been positive. It could be reiterated on. It's not perfect by any means.
Yeah, maybe that's a next week topic is how did the dinar and deterministic loot system go down. Write that down. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that video or if you're not going to watch that and we'll do something else.
Okay, cool. I think overall, though, pretty positive. I'm super excited for the expansion. Again, we want to hear about the Dinar system. Do you want to hear about that video? And in addition to that, are we just people in an echo chamber and you really want the expansion launched on this predicted date?
Yeah, again, it's a leak. It's an unconfirmed leak. It may or may not be true. It could be entirely made up. So take it all with a grain of salt. But yeah,
however, I will link this down in the description if you want to DM it to all of your friends. You can also click the link as well and give it more traffic. I'm sure it currently has 82 comments as well. So sure you can
go post a comment in there as well. That seems like a good place.
That Tettles and Dratnos sent to you. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.